is here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Well, ladies and gentlemen, man, do we have a lot to cover in 3 hours. Somehow I'll get it done. I'm a quasi-professional. I know how to do this. All right. I want to read you a little story. I want to read you a little story that's on a site called Tablet. It's an excellent site, actually. Tablet, Tablet. And we're going to continue down this route because I guess it's 5 weeks ago tomorrow. We decided that the issue here, among other things, is the Obama administration's surveillance activities and the politicization of surveillance. This is a very important piece I'm about to read to you. Hat tip from my buddy Larry O'Connor. April 5, today. The accusation that the Obama administration used information gleaned from classified foreign surveillance to smear and blackmail its political opponents at home has gained new traction in recent days, after reports that former National Security Advisor Susan Rice may have been rifling through classified transcripts for over a year that could have included information about Donald Trump and his associates. While using resources that are supposed to keep Americans safe from terrorism for other purposes may be a dereliction of duty. It's no more of a crime than spending all day on Twitter instead of doing your job. The crime here would be if she leaked the names of U.S. citizens to reporters. In the end, the seriousness of the accusation against Rice and other former administration officials who will be caught up in the unmasking scandal will rise or fall based on whether or not Donald Trump was actively engaged in a conspiracy to turn over the keys of the White House to the Kremlin. For true believers in the Trump-Kremlin conspiracy theories, the Obama spying and lying scandal isn't a scandal at all. Just public officials taking prudent steps to guard against an imminent threat to the Republic. But what if Donald Trump wasn't the first or only target of an Obama White House campaign of spying and illegal leaking directed at domestic political opponents? Let me repeat this. But what if Donald Trump wasn't the first or only target of an Obama White House campaign of spying and illegal leaks directed at domestic political opponents? By the way, you fraud reporters and journalists, so-called at CNN, you don't need to listen. You don't need to listen. You can focus on, Fox and Bill O'Reilly. In a December 29, 2015 article, the Wall Street Journal described how the Obama administration had conducted surveillance on Israeli officials to understand how Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and other Israeli officials, like Ambassador Ron Dermer, intended to fight the Iran deal. The Journal reported that the targeting also swept up the contents of some of their private conversations with U.S. lawmakers and American Jewish groups. Despite this reporting, it seemed inconceivable at the time that given myriad legal, ethical, political, and historical concerns, as well as strict National Security Agency protocols that protect the identity of American names caught in intercepts, the Obama White House would have actually spied on American citizens. In a December 31, 2016 Tablet article on the controversy, why the White House wanted Congress to think it was being spied on by the NSA, I argued that the Obama administration had merely used the appearance of spying on American lawmakers to corner opponents of the Iran deal. Spying on U.S. citizens would be a clear abuse of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance System. It would be a felony offense to leak the names of American citizens to the press. Increasingly, he writes, I believe that my conclusion in that piece was wrong. I believe that spying was real, and that it was done not in an effort to keep the country safe from threats, but in order to help the White House fight their domestic political opponents. Quote, at some point the administration weaponized the NSA's legitimate monitoring of communications of foreign officials to stay one step ahead of domestic political opponents, says a pro-Israel political operative who was deeply involved in the day-to-day fight over the Iran deal. He said the NSA's collections of foreigners became a means of gathering real-time intelligence on Americans engaged in perfectly legitimate political activism. Activism due to the nature of the issue that naturally involved conversations with foreigners. We began to notice the White House was responding immediately, sometimes within 24 hours, to specific conversations we were having. At first, we thought it was a coincidence being amplified by our own paranoia. Now, after a while, it simply became our working assumption that we were being spied on. Unquote. We talked about this the other day with a caller, didn't we? We talked about this the other day. And one of the callers brilliantly brought it up, too, which was the targeting of foreign agents or entities to surveil may have had more to do with the people who may have been contacting him who are American citizens as a way of circumventing the warrant requirement, the production of probable cause against an American citizen before the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, better known as the FISA Court. This is what systematic abuse of foreign intelligence collection for domestic political purposes looks like, he says. Intelligence collected on Americans, lawmakers, and figures in the pro-Israel community was fed back to the Obama White House as part of its political operations. The administration got the drop on its opponents by using classified information, which it then used to draw up its own game plan to block and freeze those on the other side. And with the help of certain journalists whose stories and thus careers depend on high-level access, terrorize them. Once you understand how this may have worked, it becomes easier to comprehend why and how we keep being fed daily treats of Trump's nefarious Russia ties. The issue this time isn't Israel, but Russia, yet the basic contours may be very well the same. 2 inquiries now underway on Capitol Hill, conducted by the Senate Intelligence Committee and the House Intelligence Committee, may discover the extent to which Obama administration officials unmasked the identities of Trump team members caught in foreign intelligence intercepts. What we know so far is that Obama administration officials unmasked the identity of one Trump team member, Michael Flynn, and leaked his name to the Washington Post's David Ignatius. Quote, according to a senior U.S. government official, Ignatius wrote in his January 12 column, Flynn phoned Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak several times on December 29, the day the Obama administration announced the expulsion of 35 Russian officials, as well as other measures in retaliation for the hacking. What did Flynn say, and did it undercut the U.S. sanctions? Unquote. Nothing. The Times and Post later reported. He said nothing. But exposing Flynn's name in the intercept for a political purpose was an abuse of national security apparatus, and leaking it to the press is a crime. This is familiar territory. In spying on the representatives of the American people and members of the pro-Israel community, the Obama administration learned how far it could go in manipulating the foreign intelligence surveillance apparatus for its own domestic political advantage. In both instances, the ostensible targets, Israel and Russia, were simply instruments used to go after the real targets at home. This whole damn Russia thing, as much as I despise Putin and despise what the Russians are doing and consider them a mortal threat to this country, this whole Democrat ruse, media ruse, whether or not this surrogate or that surrogate is caught up and so forth and so on, has been used, as this writer points out, to conduct domestic surveillance. And it was done before. It was done widely before in the Iran deal, the Iran matter. In order to spy on U.S. congressmen before the Iran deal vote, the Obama administration exploited a loophole, which is described in the original Wall Street Journal article. The U.S. intelligence community is supposed to keep tabs on foreign officials, even those representing allies. So, everyone in Washington knows that Israeli Ambassador Ron Dermer is under surveillance. I didn't know that. But it's different for his American interlocutors, especially U.S. lawmakers, whose identities are, according to NSA protocol, supposed to be, at the very least, redacted. But the standard for collecting and disseminating intercepted communications involving U.S. lawmakers is much less strict if it's swept up through foreign intercepts, for instance, between a foreign ambassador and his capital. Washington, that is the seat of the American government, is where foreign ambassadors are supposed to meet with American officials. The Obama administration turned an ancient diplomatic convention inside out. Foreign ambassadors were so dangerous that meeting them signaled betrayal of your own country. During the long and contentious lead-up to the Iran deal, the Israeli ambassador, Dermer, was regularly briefing senior officials in Jerusalem, including the Prime Minister, about the situation, including his meetings with American lawmakers and Jewish community leaders. The Obama administration would be less interested in what the Israelis were doing than in the actions of those who actually had the ability to block the deal, namely, Senate and House members of Congress. The administration then fed this information to members of the press, who were happy to relay thinly veiled anti-Semitic conceits by accusing deal opponents of dual loyalty and being in the pay of foreign interests. It didn't take much imagination from members of Congress to imagine their names being inserted in the Iran deal echo chamber's boilerplate, that they were beholden to donors and foreign lobbies, the Israel lobby. What would happen if the White House leaked your phone call with the Israeli ambassador to a friendly reporter, and you were then profiled as betraying the interests of your constituents and the security of your nation to a foreign power? What if the fact of your phone call appeared under the byline of a famous columnist friendly to the Obama administration, say, in a major national publication? This helps you also explain CNN. Helps you also understand CNN, MSNBC, ABC, the Washington Post, and the New York Times. To make its case for the Iran deal, the Obama administration redefined America's pro-Israel community as agents of Israel. They did something similar with Trump and the Russians, whereby every Russian with money was defined as an agent of the state. Where the Israeli ambassador once was poison, now the Russian ambassador is the kiss of death. A phone call with him led to Flynn's departure from the White House, and a meeting with him landed Attorney General Jeff Sessions in hot water. Did Trump really have dealings with FSB officers, the agency that followed the KGB? Thanks to the administration's whisper campaigns, the facts don't matter. That kind of contact is no longer needed to justify surveillance, whose spoils could then be weaponized and leaked. There are oligarchs who live in Trump Tower, and they all know Putin. Ergo, talking to them is tantamount to dealing with the Russian state. Yet, there's one key difference between the two information operations that abused foreign intelligence surveillance apparatus for political purposes. The campaign to sell the Iran deal was waged while the Obama administration was in office. The campaign to tie down Trump with the false Russia narrative was put together as the Obama team was on the way out. The intelligence gathered from the Iran deal surveillance was shared with the fewest people possible inside the administration. It was leaked to only a few top-shelf reporters, like the authors of the Wall Street Journal article, who showed how the administration exploited a loophole to spy on Congress. Congressmen and their staff certainly noticed, as did the Jewish organizations that were being spied on. But the campaign was mostly conducted, well, through whispers and leaks that made it clear what the price of opposition might be. The reason the prior abuse of the foreign intelligence surveillance apparatus is clear only now is because the Russia campaign has illuminated it. As the New York Times reported last month, the administration distributed the intelligence gathered on the Trump transition team widely throughout government agencies after it had changed the rules on distributing intercepted communications. The point of distributing the information so widely was to preserve it, the administration and its friends in the press explained. Preserve being a euphemism for leaking it. The Obama team seems not to have understood that in proliferating that material, they've exposed themselves to risk by creating a potential criminal trail that may expose systemic abuse of foreign intelligence collection. The only thing missing from Mr. Smith's excellent piece is the role this show and you played in helping to expose this. It is a big, big deal. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
By the way, there's a lot to get to today. I want to spend a good amount of time later on what's going on in the Senate. You know, Gorsuch, the Democrats, and so forth. But I want to stay on this right now. Let me be as clear as I know how, so the fraud journalists can take notes. There has been domestic surveillance, spying on American citizens, on members of Congress, on Jewish organizations, on the Israeli ambassador, on the Israeli prime minister. That is a fact, ladies and gentlemen. Now, the fact that they call it incidental really does raise some significant questions. If the goal here was to bypass, to evade the protections under the FISA law, in the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, the requirement for probable cause and warrants, in order to gather information on members of Congress, that happened. To gather information on Trump and his transition team, I believe that happened. And gather information on other politicians and other people. Well, by God, we better get to the bottom of this, one way or another. I'll be right back. Who is the National Security Advisor a couple of years ago when the Israeli Prime Minister, the Israeli ambassador, Jewish groups, your members of the House of Representatives, your members of the United States Senate were being surveilled? They can call it incidental or not. We know what took place. Who was the National Security Advisor? Seeing these same reports. Susan Rice. She was the National Security Advisor. Who was the Director of National Intelligence? James Clapper. He was the Director of National Intelligence. Who was the Director of the Central Intelligence Agency? John Brennan. He was the Director of the Central Intelligence Agency. And who was the President of the United States who received the information? Barack Obama. Now, this is key. Barack Obama received the information. Barack Obama knew what the Israelis were thinking. He knew what the Jewish groups were thinking. He knew what the members of Congress were thinking. Folks, these agencies, these departments, they're not just out there doing stuff. I mean, they do stuff. But the single person who runs these departments and agencies ultimately is the President of the United States. He is the executive branch. One person. All these other people are functionaries. As important as they are or are not, they are functionaries. They are there to serve, in the case of intelligence and national security and defense and so forth, they serve the country, but the commander-in-chief is the President of the United States. The President of the United States was receiving this information. And as the writer at the tablet points out, we see some of the same stuff taking place with respect to Trump and Russia. Anything Russia. And I am not a code pink Republican. You know who you are out there. But anything Russian is a justification for a conspiracy, For an allegation, for a supposition, for insinuation, for resignation, for recusal. That's what's happening. That's what's happening. Oh, my goodness, he spoke to a guy that worked at a Russian bank, and we know that's state-owned. Well, so what? What did they talk about? Do you know Boeing just made a fortune selling planes to the Islamo-Nazis in Tehran? Iran? Well, that's okay, because Obama said it was okay, because we have a deal with the Iranians. So if an American talks to a Russian executive at a Russian bank, whether it's Putin or state-owned or whatever the hell it is, we're supposed to insinuate something, but when Boeing actually sells aircraft to the Islamo-Nazi regime in Iran, that's to be applauded? Now, come on, folks. Come on, folks. An administration that politicized intelligence gathering in the Iran deal, an administration that surveilled 3 times as many reporters and media outlets than any previous administration? Oh, yes, yes, Mark. Nothing here. Move along, move along. Close your eyes, move along. No, I'm not moving along. I am not moving along. And I don't need the bought and paid for, ideologically left media telling me to move along. And I don't care how they characterize this or you, my beloved audience, or me, or the president. They can go to hell. It's amazing. 2 years ago, this administration was caught red-handed. Susan Rice was the National Security Advisor. James Clapper was the Director of National Intelligence. John Brennan was the CIA Director. All of them need to testify under oath, under penalty of perjury. And our friend Evelyn Farkas, the former Defense Department Deputy Assistant Secretary for Russia, Ukraine, and Eurasia, basically underscored what was in the New York Times, which I read to you over and over and over again 5 weeks ago. Then on the weekend that weekend. Then on the Monday on Hannity. Read it again and again and again because they were bragging about what they were doing. And I said, let's take them at their word. Look what they're bragging about. These are police state tactics. These are police state tactics. I don't know if anybody committed a crime or not, but I'll tell you what. This is how you lose your country. This is how you lose your country. And Susan Rice is back. The serial liar on Benghazi is back. And she lied again on PBS, I believe it was March 22nd. I'm doing this by memory. When she went on PBS and said, I don't know anything about what this Nunes is saying. Then she goes on MSNBC with Andrea Mitchell. Seems to know all about it. Seems to know all about it. Evelyn Farkas. Nobody edited anything. There she is, Evelyn Farkas. A political appointee for Obama at Defense, then a foreign policy advisor to Hillary Clinton during her presidential campaign. There she is, early March, bragging about what they're doing. Now I tell people on the Hill to get it to the Hill, get it to the Hill. We have good intelligence on right. Get it to the Hill, get it to the Hill. And who on the Hill got it? Did Adam Schiff get it? Did Mark Warner get it? I'm not making accusations. I am asking serious questions that any investigator, whether they're a reporter or a prosecutor, should be asking. Who got what? What are you talking about, Evelyn? And then she says it's the Russians who must have planted this. The Russians? The Russians who planted what? Did they have a mask of her face? A mask of Mika Brzezinski's face? Did they create an MSNBC, a parallel MSNBC, where you then appeared and you spoke as Evelyn Farkas and Mika Brzezinski spoke as Mika Brzezinski on a fake MSNBC? Is that what the Russians did? You idiot. And there's Don Lemon. all dressed up with his new bow tie, telling his very small audience, I'm not going here. I'm not going here. I'm a good hack. I'm the biggest loser of losers. Then there's some schmo, I forget his name. What is his name? The guy that used to actually work for Obama. Shudo. Now he's a reporter. A reporter on national security affairs for CNN. And he's reporting on this. My sources tell me, well, none of this is bad. It's all routine. Okay, got you. Jake Tapper. Cat got your tongue, Jake? We don't hear from Jake Tapper. Amazing. By the way, I might say this. You've all been reading these reports on O'Reilly. There is an organized effort. I'm no O'Reilly fan. Trust me on this. Mr. Producer, I despise the man, do I not? We've been going at it for years. And he's done what he's done, which is awful. Terrible. Terrible. But have you ever seen one network go after a host on another network? I happen to know from the public record over there on CNN, you have a pretty sleazy host yourself over there. Been married a couple times, cheated on his wife. You know who I mean. Come on. You guys can Google it. You can Google it. You got all kinds of sleazeballs over there at CNN. Speaking of CNN, you got all kinds of sleazeballs over there at MSNBC. Starting with this Chris Matthews. Oh, yeah, Chris. You know what I mean, Chris. He's just a complete sleaze. What are you implying? I'm not implying anything. Just Google. Let's go to Paul, West Palm Beach, Florida. Sirius Satellite, go.
Hey, Mark, how are you? I'd like to know, when is anybody going to be held responsible?
All right, listen to me. These questions are pointless. I don't go to the end game, who's going to hold what responsible. Don't you first want as much exposed as possible, Paul?
Of course I do, but that's all.
Okay, well, that I'm sorry. I'm not law enforcement. And I'm not going to just be, yeah, you're right, darn it, no, they never do. No. We're on the trail, Paul. We got to stay focused. Stay in the zone.
Oh, I'm focused.
Stay in the zone.
Is anybody, who else would you say is focused now in this administration to really get down to the bottom of it? So you're saying let's expose everything. I completely 100% agree with you. When do you think that end game might be?
All right, listen, I have no idea. No idea. You know, the thing I notice, thanks for your call, Paul, the thing I notice about the left is that they're very patient. Don't get me wrong. They're in a hurry about stuff, but they're very patient. They're resolute is what I'm trying to say. They don't give up. They don't say, well, who's going to hold this guy? All right, I can't take it anymore. I'm going to eat some meatballs. I can't. All right, guys, if something's not done, even Trump with the health care bill, 18 days, can't get it? All right, I'm out of here. I'm working with the Democrats. Screw that. Go, whoa, slow down, pal. For 100 years, they wanted Obamacare. It took them 100 years, and they get it. With us, it's 5 weeks, and it's, hey, how come nobody's in jail? Well, it's not the way it works, is it? You're just going to frustrate yourselves. You're going to drive yourself crazy. We just have to keep at it. And so do the real journalists out there have to keep at it. I really believe this is the tip of the iceberg. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm just one little radio host out here. But I'm noticing the pom-pom boys and girls and the Rockettes out there, the backbenchers, they are really into this now. Have you noticed that, Mr. Producer? I'm in the car, and the same guy's going on. As I predicted, you couldn't find them 5 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. Now they see the momentum. Now, hey, let me get in front of this. They haven't contributed a damn thing. They're observers. I told you that the real issue here is the Obama administration. Really? When did you tell us that? When I said it here? 5 Thursdays ago tomorrow? On Fox and Friends on Sunday? On Hannity on the following Monday? This is a big deal, ladies and gentlemen. It just is. And the more voices, the better. Because the dug-in Praetorian Guard media wants none of this. Barack Obama is on an island somewhere working on his book. Yeah, okay. Working on his book. All your research tools in Tahiti? I don't know how you do a book in Tahiti, Mr. Producer, do you? Well, you have the Internet. Well, you need more than the Internet. And, but no, this is something where we need to continue to stay on top of this. And I've been bringing various experts on this program, and we're going to have two outstanding experts at the top of the next hour, too. One who worked at the CIA. One who worked directly on national security as well, both of whom I know. One gentleman who I met first many years ago. Another who I met a couple of years ago. But they're both good men. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
I mentioned Monday. I mentioned yesterday. I want to mention today. You will also be able to determine which media outlets are reliable and which reporters are reliable and which are not, based on this event. Based on this event alone. I know most of them are to be distrusted. And I have a Gallup poll in front of me from just 6 or 7 months ago where the media has reached a new low with the American people. They're in the gutter with their ratings. But here you're going to really be able to make some observations and be able to discern one from the other. And I would encourage you to continue to do that. I suggested this last week, several times this week, today, but you already know this. I just want to underscore it. You know, I believe strongly in the philosophy of hoping for the best but preparing for the worst. Hoping for the best but preparing for the worst. Do you know how massive our unfunded liabilities are? Do you know they're $230 trillion right now? Do you know they don't even put those on the books? They don't even count. The fiscal operating debt is almost $20 trillion. $10 trillion added just in the last 8 years. These programs are out of control. The federal government's out of control. The Republicans are not planning on doing a damn thing about it. They have another $1 trillion infrastructure plan in mind. Matter of fact, President Trump said over $1 trillion. He was very proud of that. Over $1 trillion? Another boondoggle? Over $1 trillion? Of course, some people will benefit, but most people won't. And the people who clearly won't are your children and grandchildren. Debt is always wrapping up some good intention or some political motive. A war on poverty, helping this group, helping that group, building this, building that. But there's a point at which, as in your own household, you got to have some self-control or you're going to destroy yourself. Meanwhile, the Federal Reserve had to at some point, and it started now, interesting, not during the Obama administration, is starting to raise interest rates, and they've already announced they're going to raise them throughout the year. The interest on the debt is massive. It's going to take up a big chunk of each annual fiscal budget of the federal government. Now, what do you do about all this? Well, you need to protect yourself. The way you protect yourself and your family and what you've earned is through diversification. Maybe you have an IRA, maybe you have some other pension plan, and it invests in all kinds of stocks and bonds and so forth. Maybe you have investment in a home, which is a good idea, and you have real estate. Whatever. But don't ignore a physical asset like gold or silver. Don't ignore it. I don't ignore it. I have gold, and I buy gold. Goldline's Express IRA makes acquiring gold and silver for you fast and simple. Fast and simple. They have all kinds of wonderful programs that you can look at in terms of acquiring gold, including fractional ounces to make it quite affordable. And they will talk you through it, and they will also tell you about important risk information. So they're very transparent. But my view is you really need to diversify. You need to protect yourselves. And also, if you call Goldline right now, you will get a free Ronald Reagan presidential coin. That's just for calling. A free Ronald Reagan presidential coin for as long as they last, which won't be forever. So give them a buzz. Ask them about any question you have. But protect yourself. 877-365-COIN, 877-365-2646, 877-365-COIN. Let's take a quick call. Will, Wilkesboro, North Carolina, Sirius Satellite, go.
Hey, Mark, I just want to say your instincts on this story since day one 5 weeks ago have been absolutely terrific. And when you brought all those sources together across time and really laid the groundwork for some of the reporting that's going to have to go on now that you've put out another piece today, this article you just read, I think is absolutely phenomenal. And I at some point, I believe it just has to get traction, and you're exactly right. We just got to stay on it because even more is to come, and that's the sad part.
Well, Will, I appreciate it. Thanks for your call, my friend. Very, very kind. We've got two big-time experts who are going to help us through this. We're also going to talk about the Senate, the filibuster, the Democrats, and the Supreme Court in short order. I'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Now, I have two experts with me. Top-of-the-line experts. Fred Fleitz, Senior Vice President for Policy and Programs with the Center for Security Policy. Before that, former CIA analyst and senior staff, House Intelligence Committee. Tony Shaffer, retired Lieutenant Colonel. He's Vice President, London Center for Policy Research, retired CIA operative, former cyber and info operations. Gentlemen, how are you?
Good. Thanks, Mark.
Well, thank you for both coming on this program. But you've been watching what's going on here. We have a national security assistant to the President of the United States who at first said on March 22nd in PBS that she knew nothing really of what Nunes was talking about. Then she does an interview this week on MSNBC with Andrea Mitchell and seems to know quite a bit and seems to even admit that from time to time she did unmasking. On top of that, we have New York Times stories, including one story that talks about changing the NSA rules when it comes to the distribution of information before there's really privacy protections put in place, and they did that on January 3rd on the way out the door. We have another New York Times story. I'm just, giving a synopsis for the audience here. We have another New York Times story in March which talks about how White House officials, quote-unquote, plural, were gathering this intelligence information and then circulating it to make sure it's not destroyed. And then finally, at least for this synopsis, we have Evelyn Farkas, who was a Deputy Assistant Secretary at Defense for Russia, Ukraine, Eurasia. She resigns in September 2015. But in early March, she's on MSNBC, and she's going on about how we have very good intelligence on Russia and how she wanted this information to get on the Hill. She wanted her colleagues to get the information out, related apparently to Trump or the Trump transition or whatever it was. Now, here are my questions. Let me start with Fred, and then I want to go to Tony. Does this not smell of domestic surveillance to you? And at the least, does it not smell of the mishandling of of intelligence by domestic political appointees?
I think there's no doubt of that, Mark. I believe for some time now that there was a comprehensive effort by the Obama administration to use FISA warrants to actually target Trump's staff during the campaign. That has not been proved. And also to exploit incidental collection. That's intelligence cables collected for some other reason, and to scour them for what appear to be names of Trump officials, have those names unmasked, and then leak that material to the news media. Now, the Democrats and Susan Rice and the mainstream media are upset because Devin Nunes has apparently found the goods, that Susan Rice actually was involved in abusing incidentally collected intelligence to target the Trump campaign and the Trump transition.
And let me add to that, Mark. Yeah,
Tony, go ahead.
What Fred said is that, look, I think beyond the FISA, she was using what we call foreign intelligence collection under Title 50, which was done under the extension of EO 12333, which prohibits certain collection activities except against terrorist organizations, foreign intelligence services. And the only way, Mark, a U.S. citizen can be targeted as part of that is they have a direct link and involvement with it. If you do not have a link, if you do not have intelligence indicating that you are a member or related to that, you cannot be collected on, and information cannot be retained. And let's remind everybody that Jim Clapper just about 6 weeks ago lied about this himself. He denied any sort of existing training in this, so I think any sort of collection. So we have to be very clear on this, that someone did indeed go about trying to do everything they could to undermine the processes in place to prevent the politicization of this information. This information is supposed to be only used to identify actions and intentions, at least on the Title 50 side, of foreign threats, terrorism or foreign intelligence, and that's it. So we have to remember that in the systems I've worked in, and I've briefed the White House in previous operations on these sorts of operations, we were talking about a massive number of U.S. citizens possibly getting caught up in collection. We had to bin them instantly, separate them out from foreign targets, and then destroy that before we could see it. And then, Mark, you may remember something called Able Danger we ran back in the late 90s, which during that time we were prohibited from looking at some of the 9/11 hijackers because they were considered quote-unquote U.S. persons. So this issue has always been something taken very seriously by the intelligence community, which apparently was completely ignored by Susan Rice in this White House.
Fred Fleitz, let me ask you this question. The National Security Advisor reports to the President of the United States. Why hasn't anybody, I have been pressing this point, asked the question, well, what did she tell the President of the United States about this information? Isn't it likely? The fact of the matter is they gathered information on the Prime Minister of Israel. They gathered information on the ambassador from Israel. They gathered information on Jewish groups and Jewish individuals on the Iran deal. They gathered information on members of Congress. Members of Congress. This is 2 years ago. Susan Rice was the National Security Advisor then. The President of the United States was briefed on some of this information. He wanted to know what was going on. Why would she suddenly say, you know what we're doing is wrong, and you know what, we're not going to tell the President anything in this regard? Do you think that's possible?
I think there's a lot we need to find out about these requests that Susan Rice's name was on. I think it's very likely that this information she collected was being shared by the President. But I think something else is going on, Mark. I think there was an operation in the National Security Council that includes our friend Ben Rhodes to go after the Trump campaign.
Ben Rhodes, the deputy to Susan Rice. Go right ahead.
Yes. I think, and also a guy named Ned Price, a former CIA officer who was working for Ben Rhodes, who's on CNN every day bashing Mr. Trump. I think there was an operation underway in the NSC, and this information that was being demasked by Rice, not only do I think she was sharing it with the President, but I think it was part of this operation probably run by Ben Rhodes to target the Trump campaign and then the Trump transition.
Tony?
Yeah, same thing. Look, Mark, if you go back and listen very carefully to Susan Rice's interview 2 days ago on MSNBC, listen carefully. She talks about this information being shared with not only her but other officials. So that's key. She says that. And also, frankly, she throws the President under the bus. She denies outright that she had a quote-unquote spreadsheet, but she goes on to say, Mark, in the very next breath, but the President asked us to consolidate information from all these sources. So in my judgment, that to me, if I'm a former investigator, to me that's sufficient, a spontaneous admission, spontaneous utterance that shows that there was at least some level of direct knowledge of President Obama. And if President Obama knew, everybody knew. And the question then becomes, and I'm sorry, I'm not saying this to be over the top, we're talking about a Watergate level abuse of authority that apparently Susan Rice was encouraged to do. And look, Mark, she worked for the President. There was nobody above her.
Well, here's my point. If she shared the information with the President, then the President could have told her, you know what, cut this out. This doesn't look right to me. But apparently, again, we have the example of 2 years ago where they were gathering the information on members of Congress through the back door. And one of the things that this fellow wrote in the tablet today, Lee Smith, was an outstanding point. A couple of my callers have made this point. And let me ask you two gentlemen this question. Is it possible you get your FISA warrant, you target a foreign individual, ambassador, you target foreign government, even foreign citizens and so forth, and but you know who to target because you know that the Trump transition team, and maybe it's more than Trump, maybe it's other Republicans, whomever it is, you know that they're likely to talk to them, and this is kind of a backward doorway to get what you couldn't get through probable cause in front of the FISA court? Fred Fleitz?
Well, this incident you're talking about that the Obama administration was using intelligence collected against U.S. senators and Jewish groups concerning the nuclear deal with Iran is very serious. And I wrote about this in National Review. Here's what happened. NSA came to the White House and said, we have this information on U.S. senators meeting with Israeli officials, including Netanyahu. Would you like to see it? It concerns the Iran deal. But see, Mark, there's a rule that says that when NSA collects information about senators, it's supposed to be destroyed unless there's an urgent national security reason not to. Well, getting the Iran deal through Congress was not a national security reason. It was a domestic political reason. And the White House said to NSA, well, do what you want. We won't tell you to do it. We won't tell you not to do it. So this stuff was given to the Obama administration, and it used to win the Iran deal. But this showed bad faith by NSA, which I think is very significant when we talk about the demasking process that Susan Rice later used against the Trump campaign.
Mm-hmm. Tony?
And to continue thinking, Mark, what Fred says is completely correct, but we have to understand, as much as I do believe NSA showed bad faith, there's two other legal paths that Susan Rice could have gotten to that information besides Title 18. Fred's basically talking about Title 18 and FISA. We're talking about the potential of using Title 50 through certain authorities that CIA has to actually collect on U.S. citizens without any warrant, and Title 10. Title 10 is those military authorities that NSA inherently has as a DoD organization. And this goes back to when President Bush was accused of doing, quote-unquote, warrantless wiretaps. There are ways to use NSA in a completely military way. So when the investigation is done, not only do we look in the FISA court areas, which clearly I believe there was abuse, we have to look at these other two sets of authorities which have been used, can be used for purposes of bypassing FISA courts and being able to collect directly on U.S. citizens. And this could get very murky very quickly. But again, I think all roads lead back in some form to NSA.
These reports, they went out to a whole bunch of people after January 3rd in particular. They went out to a bunch of intel departments and probably the FBI and Justice and so forth and so on. So the people looking at them at the senior level or the experiential level would know that there's something wrong with these reports, the way that Nunes knew there was something wrong with these reports. And I have to believe it's one of those people who saw this at the second or third tier level, below the political presidential appointee level, who felt there was something wrong and tipped off Nunes. Don't you think something like that is probably what happened? Fred?
I think there were some whistleblowers in government who did the right thing. And, they did the right thing by not going to the press. They went to the intelligence committees. That's the right thing to do. I was on the committee. That's what we want to happen. They knew this was wrong. And that's why President Trump has to staff the government as fast as possible, because once we have our people in government, the whistleblowers will have folks to come to, and they will be able to tell the Trump appointees what's really been going on in this administration. It's so urgent and that be done as soon as possible.
Yeah, and to continue that, Mark, I was an actual whistleblower, and I went to Congress first regarding misused and lost opportunities of intelligence regarding the 9/11. And one of the issues, we had a hearing in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee back when Arlen Specter was chair regarding the potential misuse of information that resulted in information not being passed to the FBI for action regarding the fact that terrorists were treated as U.S. citizens. That's how they were treating it back in the day. So I think at this point, because those whistleblowers came forward, we probably know both the paper trail directly from Rice to NSA. That's a good thing. And secondly, Mark, I think those individuals, those U.S. citizens who had their rights violated, need to be told who they are. I think that the government has to inform them of the potential, I would say there's a potential issue of relief here that should be looked at by the individuals, because their constitutional rights of privacy has clearly been violated. And I think this is where we need to go next with some of the issues relating to the whistleblowers. People need to be notified that, frankly, that they were targeted by the White House for purposes of political influence and gain rather than proper use of intelligence methodology.
Now, we only have 2 minutes left here, but I wanted to ask you this very quickly. Evelyn Farkas kept saying, get the stuff to the Hill, get the stuff to the Hill. I suppose they got some stuff to the Hill. Now, doesn't that concern us a little bit? You have to assume they got it to the intelligence committees. You have to assume they got it to certain Democrats on the intelligence committees. How do we find that out?
Can I tell you something about Evelyn Farkas that I think no one's thought about?
All right, go right ahead.
What Farkas said indicates that she was getting intelligence as a member of the Clinton campaign as to destroy Trump. I think that the Obama White House was collaborating with the Clinton campaign on this effort to destroy Trump with intelligence.
Now, let me just be clear, just for legal reasons. You don't know this, but you're saying I'm putting one and one together. Yeah.
She had too much inside information, and we know she was a member of the Clinton campaign, and I don't think this was just the Obama administration going after Trump on its own. I think it was being coordinated with Clinton campaign officials.
Right.
Tony?
The point, Mark, real quick, is look, this election went well before the election day. We're talking probably about the time Donald Trump got the nomination, so the information goes way back. And then the distribution of classified information, and I can say this for a fact, is a crime, is a Title 18 felony. So we're looking at people like Farkas and others who have basically admitted to felony-level crimes of distributing classified information. And so that's...
Now, I just want to slow down as a lawyer, you know. They're not here, and we don't know that they've committed crimes yet. But you're saying that it does implicate certain criminal statutes as far as you're concerned.
Mark, based on the fact that I was briefed on certain things I could not do with classified information, it sounds to me, based on my professional judgment, Farkas and others, to include Susan Rice, have violated federal statutes relating to protection of highly classified sources and methods.
Do you think the FBI director will be interested in this?
One would hope.
Yeah, one would hope. Yeah. Well, guys, I really appreciate it. Fred Fleitz, Senior Vice President for Policy Programs, Center for Security Policy, former CIA analyst, former senior staffer, House Intel Committee. Tony Shaffer, Vice President, London Center for Policy Research, retired CIA operative, former cyber and info operations. God bless you guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark.
All right, take care. When do you think they'll be on CNN, Mr. Producer? I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Fred Fleitz and Tony Shaffer. Fred Fleitz has never been on this program. Tony Shaffer, I believe, once before, some time ago, adding their expertise to this. And it does make CNN and some of these other outlets look as incompetent, ideological, and partisan as can be, as can possibly be. You know, at least Fox is quote unquote fair and balanced. They drag in these former Obama officials, which I find unwatchable personally, and liberal Democrats from the Hill and so forth. When you have hosts announce like the negative IQ Don Lemon, and you have a former Obama foreign policy staffer, now their chief foreign policy reporter, national security reporter at CNN, with his propaganda and his baloney. Nothing here, no big deal. And obviously this has come down from Zucker. This is coming down from the top. Don't take the bait, We liberals, we know what we're doing. We're real journalists here. We're not going to be, Besides, they were invested in trashing me and invested in trashing Chairman Nunes. Bad investment, boys. Very, very bad investment. As they used to say in the 1960s, and I'll say it right here behind this microphone, ladies and gentlemen, we shall overcome. I'll be right back. By the way, Houston, looks like we have a Kushner problem, Houston. Just to deflect a little bit from the issue, not the substance, obviously. Jared Kushner, about 35 years old, the president's son-in-law. Been a liberal Democrat his entire life and has supported liberal Democrats his entire life. Perfectly nice man. I met him once by accident. Met Ivanka once, too, by accident. Perfectly nice lady. Wonderful couple, wonderful kids. Okay. But a liberal. And he's consolidating power. It's obvious in the White House. He's consolidating power along with this guy, Gary Cohn, C-O-H-N, the number 2 guy, formerly of Goldman Sachs. Another liberal Democrat, extremely wealthy man, and apparently a big mouth. Another big mouth liberal. So we got Gary Cohn, a big mouth liberal Democrat, big time. Very nice man in Jared Kushner, who's in charge of the Middle East. He's in charge of China. He's in charge of reorganizing the government and anything else he wants to be in charge of. That's pretty amazing. Since he basically inherited a fortune in the real estate business, I'm sure he's highly qualified. Actually, I'm not. I'm being sarcastic. Over the Treasury Department, we have another liberal Democrat, Munch or whatever his name is, but it's the number 2 guy over there. I have on very good intelligence who is blowing out anybody who's not a liberal Democrat. So this is why Bannon's under attack over there at the White House. And, of course, no constitutional conservative is under attack because there aren't any. Over commerce, we have Wilbur Ross, another liberal Democrat. Now, that's not to say that the president isn't doing some good things. The president's doing many good things. But personnel at some point does become policy. And these are very, very bad decisions in terms of the inner senior circle. Very bad decisions. A 35-year-old liberal Democrat from New York who knows very little about most things, and a big mouth liberal Democrat from Goldman Sachs who knows very little about most things. And then overheading presidential personnel, the assistant to the president was one of the longest-serving senior advisors to John Boehner. Another schmuck. So these things are concerning to me. Very concerning to me. But I want to get into the Supreme Court and the Senate and so forth in a little while, as well as a few other things. And we will stay on topic with respect to this Obama administration scandal. And that's exactly what it is. I just saw one commentator during a break on Fox, which is why I ought to watch the Jewelry Channel. This is why Fox is here. We cover things the other networks won't. Really? Actually, this is why the Mark Levin show is here, Brett. There's a key reason I endorse Blindster.com instead of any other window treatment company. That's blindster.com, by the way. Yes, they have a huge selection of custom blinds, shutters, and shades. Yes, their prices are rock bottom. Yes, I love their exclusive fit or free guarantee. Owner Kyle Cox is so certain that you can measure and install your own custom blinds that if for any reason they don't fit, even if you messed up, Blindster will replace them for free, and you only pay for shipping. But here's the real heart of Blindster. Even though they sell millions of window treatments, they're more like your neighborhood mom-and-pop store. And it's small, family-owned businesses that are backbone of America. And I'm proud to partner with Blindster because Kyle takes such great care of you. You, my listeners, you'll get 35% off with promo code MARK at checkout. If you use a tape measure and a screwdriver, if you know how to use them, well, you can install the highest quality custom shade shutters and blinds too. So visit my good friends at blindster.com, blindster.com, use promo code MARK and get 35% off. That's blindster.com, promo code MARK for 35% off. Let me throw another topic on the table, and it is a big topic. What's going on in the United States Senate? They are destroying what's left of the United States Senate. And I hope you'll watch Levin TV tonight. I spend the entire program on this issue and address it in ways that I cannot and will not do on the radio. But I can address it in other ways on the radio. Those of you who've read Men in Black or are familiar with it, it was my first book. And it was a blockbuster. People said, a book on the Supreme Court? You sold 300, 400,000 copies, whatever it was? That's never been done before. I said, well, it's because I think I pointed out a number of things in that book. And one of the things I did in the book is I challenged a court decision called Marbury versus Madison. Everybody praises that decision. I did not. And it is that decision that laid the foundation for the kind of judicial supremacy that we see today, even though Chief Justice John Marshall at the time never anticipated it. He laid the groundwork. And I would argue in a decision, Marbury versus Madison, that he shouldn't even been able to participate in, given the fact he had a role in the underlying facts. But there were Federalists and there were Anti-Federalists when it came to the ratification of the Constitution, ladies and gentlemen. The Federalists largely supported it. The Anti-Federalists, some supported it, but most did not. And I've talked about this before. James Madison was a genius, but he was also a genius with language and with positioning. You see, the Federalists were actually the Anti-Federalists. What does federalism mean? The primacy of state sovereignty is anti-federalism. Federalism means the primacy of federal sovereignty. Now, by the way, we use that term today, federalism, to mean what is today anti-federalism. I'm not trying to get into the weeds, I'm just making a point. It's a point necessary to be made because Robert Yates was one of the famous anti-federalists. And he wrote under the name Brutus. And Robert Yates was a judge. Robert Yates, an ardent anti-federalist, he was a delegate to the Constitutional Ratification Convention in New York. And if you've listened to this program, you know that the ratification in New York was losing badly, which is one of the reasons why Hamilton, along with John Jay and Madison, were writing the Federalist Papers for all the states in terms of ratification, but particularly a handful of them. New York, they were well behind. They were well behind. And so Hamilton had 500 copies, eventually, of all the Federalist papers, these essays, published into a volume by a New York printer. And 50 of them were sent to Virginia, which was also in trouble. 450 were used in New York and perhaps other places. Nobody's really certain. I was lucky enough to acquire one of them a few years ago and donate it to Hillsdale College. So Robert Yates, he was a particularly articulate opponent of the Constitution. In a series of essays published in the New York Journal, they became known, by the way, as the Anti-Federalist Papers. As I said, Yates famously wrote under the pseudonym Brutus. In Essay 11, Yates questioned the powers and the pitfalls of the proposed new federal judicial system. I'm laying the foundation to put this in context for what's going on today. Just stick with me. Here's what he warned, and I quote, "The real effect of this system of government will therefore be brought home to the feelings of the people through the medium of the judicial power. It is, moreover, of great importance to examine with care the nature and extent of the judicial power, because those who are to be vested with it are to be placed in a situation altogether unprecedented in a free country. They are to be rendered totally independent, both of the people and the legislature, both with respect to their offices and salaries. No errors they may commit can be corrected by any power above them, if any such power there be. Nor can they be removed from office for making ever so many erroneous adjudications. The only causes for which they can be displaced is conviction of treason, bribery, and high crimes and misdemeanors. This part of the plan is so modeled as to authorize the courts not only to carry into execution the powers expressly given, but where they are wanting or ambiguously expressed, to supply what is wanting by their own decisions. This man, brilliant and prescient. Yates also warned the Supreme Court would not be constrained by the strict language of the Constitution, regardless of the assurances being offered at the time by the pro-Constitution writers. Here's what he said. They will give the sense of every article of the Constitution that may from time to time come before them, and in their decisions they will not confine themselves to any fixed or established rules, but will determine, according to what appears to them, the reason and spirit of the Constitution. The opinions of the Supreme Court, whatever they may be, will have the force of law, because there's no power provided in the Constitution that can correct their errors or control their adjudications. From this court there is no appeal. And once activist judges, this is me, and once activist judges found themselves freed from the constraints imposed by the Constitution, Yates predicted there would be no practicable limit to the court reach. Here's what he said. When the courts will have a precedent before them of a court which extended its jurisdiction in opposition to an act of the legislature, it is not to be expected that they will extend theirs, especially when there's nothing in the Constitution expressly against it. And they are authorized to construe its meaning and are not under any control. This power in the judicial, which will enable them to mold the government into almost any shape they please. Yates predicted the process by which the federal judiciary would achieve primacy over the state governments and other branches of the national government. Here's what he wrote. Perhaps nothing could have been better conceived to facilitate the abolition of the state governments than the constitution of the judicial. They will be able to extend the limits of the general government gradually and by insensible degrees, and to accommodate themselves to the temper of the people. Their decisions on the meaning of the Constitution will commonly take place in cases which arise between individuals with which the public will not be generally acquainted. One adjudication will form a precedent to the next, and this to be a following one. And do you not hear the Democrats talk about judicial precedent is to be adhered to even more than the Constitution itself? Do you not hear them talking about a living and breathing Constitution so the courts have wide latitude for activist judges to impose their ideology on the nation? Mr. Yates was exactly correct. Now, the Constitution doesn't do these things, but he was exactly correct about human behavior and tyranny. And there's a battle taking place in the United States Senate tomorrow and the next day. The battle is between constitutionalism and totalitarianism. And I'll explain more when we return.
Mark Levin.
Elizabeth Warren, you're as nutty as a fruitcake. 2013, over at Right Scoop, they point out she pushed for the nuclear option in 2013. Today she opposes it. Let me strongly encourage you, even though we have some time yet until it comes out, to grab a copy via Amazon. You can pre-order a copy of Rediscovering Americanism and the Tyranny of Progressivism. I think it'll be one of the most unique books you've ever read. It's, in my view, the best book I've ever written. It'll be book number 7. And I just think it's going to open a lot of eyes and minds to what's playing out in this country today. Now, I know you know the particulars. I know you know current events. That's not what I'm talking about. Where does all this come from? All this tension, these balkanized forces. And it is a battle. And it is a battle we have to win. But you will have the philosophical understanding. You will have the principled understanding. You will have the logical understanding, why certain of these things matter, and what we're up against, and who these other people are. Not by name, you know who Elizabeth Warren is. I'm not talking about, the book's not about politics per se. It's not about Donald Trump per se. I'll let everybody else slap books together, put their faces on a book, shoot it out and say, look at me, look at me. I don't write books like that. These are books intended for the ages, not for an election cycle or a 3-month period and that sort of thing. So you can go to Amazon.com. We link to it on Mark Levin Facebook and Mark Levin Twitter. I hope you'll get a copy. I will note that Amazon's already discounting it by 34%. That's pretty darn good. So when it comes out, you'll have it right on your desk. We're going to spend a lot of time on it because there's a lot of very important information in there. And next hour, we're going to spend a lot more time on what's going on in the Senate because this is your government. It's your Senate. It's your Supreme Court. And what's taking place here is absolutely diabolical. It's been a crazy couple of weeks over at Levin TV, and we have a magnificent show for you tonight. We've had every mainstream media network coming out of the woodwork to take a jab at yours truly. This Obama surveillance scandal has blown up, and they're backpedaling away from it as fast as they can, or, again, they're attacking those who dare to talk about it. Have you noticed when they originally released the reporting mentioning the surveillance, they called it journalism? They even used the word wiretap. Oh, my goodness. But now that I've put it together in some of these pieces and we're trying to follow a trail of information about the conduct of the Obama administration, all of a sudden, we're conspiracy theorists. Look, I think Levin TV is what you've been waiting for. You know, I'm not going to be intimidated. I'm not going to drop this or anything else that I think is important to you and the country. We pinned down the statist media, and you can tell that they're concerned. I think they are. The only downside, you can't watch me take on this media, the mainstream so-called statist media, on mainstream media coverage. You can't watch me on mainstream media because we build our own platforms to get around them. The only place you're going to see coverage of these bombshell revelations and much, much more is on Levin TV. The good news is you can try out Levin TV for 7 days absolutely free and see it for yourself, starting with tonight's program. Absolutely free for 7 days. Give us a call, 844-LEVIN-TV, 844-LEVIN-TV. Again, that's 844-LEVIN-TV. If you don't have it, tonight's a great night to start. It's a great program. How do I know? Because I did it. That's how I know. We've got a lot more in our final hour, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you'll hang around. A lot more to talk about with respect to the Democrats, the Senate, the filibuster, and we'll really dig deeply with you. I'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. Mark Levin here. Our final hour of the night, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Don't miss Levin TV tonight, seriously. Now, I mentioned to you, and then we'll get back into the court, the Senate, the Democrats, Schumer, and so forth, because there's much that needs to be said. I mentioned to you about a half hour ago that Jared Kushner, 35-year-old liberal Democrat, son-in-law of the president, and Gary Kahn, C-O-H-N, Gary Kahn, the former number 2 at Goldman Sachs. These are two liberal Democrats who are clearly not conservatives, no knowledge about so much that is important. So they're knee-jerk liberal Democrats, pretty much. And Gary Kahn, from what I'm told, not by anybody in the White House. I don't talk to anybody in the White House. Nobody. Gary Kahn is a big mouth. A big mouth. Knows everything. Kushner's very quiet, kind of slip and slide. But there's a third. Her name is Dina Powell. And she worked in the Bush White House, where she had a very interesting reputation. Dina Powell. Now, she was Ivanka's chief of staff. Then she made herself the Deputy National Security Advisor. She's pushing out K.T. McFarlane. She pushed out Bannon. And I'm told she's not going to be stopped. In fact, she could wind up being Donald Trump's chief of staff. We'll see, won't we? So here you have three people with absolutely no connection to the nationalist populist people who voted for Trump, absolutely no connection to constitutional conservatives, none. And barely any connection, in two of their cases, to the Republican Party. And they are tightening their control over there at the White House. They're tightening their control. And, you know, this I blame on the president. He's in charge of his own staff. This is his senior staff. I blame this on President Trump. You know, I mean, you pick Priebus. He was never very good, but that's your guy. And while I disagree with Bannon on a number of issues, I agree with him on some others. But you have got to have people with different views, certainly on the right, in your inner circle. You don't even have a single constitutional conservative among your policy and political advisors. Not one. Got all these liberal Democrats from New York City. Now, I didn't vote for Jared Kushner. Did you, ladies and gentlemen? I didn't vote for this jerk, Gary Kahn. Did any of you, folks? I didn't know who the hell this pal, Dina Powell, is. Do you, folks? A Bush retread? The other jerk over at the Treasury Department? The other jerk over at the Commerce Department? Apparently, Jared is not into breaking up the administrative state. I don't understand why. You know, when we went to college, I don't remember these things. I mean, I don't remember these things really being attacked or anything like that, you know. I just don't. I don't. I would love to know what this kid reads. Or what he's read. I would just love to know. Mr. Producer, will you invite Gary Kahn on the program, please? I want to have a friendly interview. I want to know what he does. I want to know what he does. I know what his long title is. I just want to know what he does. See if we can get Gary Kahn on here. He's not on many programs. Have you noticed that? He's kind of under the radar. Yeah, well, I won't say anything else. We'll try and get him on. I want to get back to what's going on in the United States Senate. And I discussed this in an elaborate way on Levin TV tonight, but I want to hit it right now as well. Ladies and gentlemen, not only is the Supreme Court something that was not established by the framers as it operates today, the Senate is not what's established originally in the Constitution either. The progressive era, which started, I would argue, really in the mid-1800s, but we can play along, the late 1800s into the early 1900s and so forth, and you'll learn about a lot of this in Rediscovering Americanism, because it's really more than that, but okay, but I just want to touch on this now. It was an attack on the institutions set up that is established by our Constitution. And they wanted to empower the courts because they felt that they could get their masterminds on the courts, populate the courts, and in the end, make sure the courts have the final say. On the other hand, they wanted to control the population, so that they tried to give appeal to populism. I've heard that word all the time. Well, the left started it. Populism and nationalism. The left started that too. And so people run around waving the flag as the progressives seize more and more power and centralize more and more power in the name of the people, of course. And so they turned the people basically into a mob, a controllable mob, but a mob that lurches in one direction and pulls in another direction as the masterminds require. Two of the things they did in 1913, under Republicans, but also with the support of Democrats, was considered a nationalist, populist, progressive agenda. The federal income tax, they used the same class warfare. Got to get the rich, got to get the rich. The federal income tax, that is the 16th Amendment to the Constitution. And in the case of the Senate, the 17th Amendment, which followed quickly, actually was passed even faster than the 16th Amendment, and that is the direct election of senators. So people say, yes, I want to vote. I want a direct election of senators. Well, the problem is, that's what the House of Representatives is for. The direct election of members of the House of Representatives. The purpose of the Senate was for its members to represent the states from where the senators come, so they could be influenced by the state legislatures and by the governors. With the direct election of senators, obviously, they're no different when it comes to elections other than the size of the state and when they're up for election than now a congressman. So they don't appeal to the states. They don't care what the state legislature has to say. So you have circumstances, I'll give you an example, like in Obamacare. State of the Commonwealth of Virginia, the state. You had the two senators, both Democrats, vote for Obamacare. You had the governor oppose it, and the Attorney General, Ken Cuccinelli, fight it in court and win in federal district court. Now, you wouldn't have that situation but for the 17th Amendment, where you have two United States senators from Virginia, and of course I'm using this as just one example, they're myriad examples, voting one way to accommodate the national party, to accommodate the will of the president, to accommodate the will of the majority leader and the Speaker of the House, all of whom are Democrats, and to reject the views and the input of the highest public officials in the state of Virginia, the governor, the lieutenant governor, but really in this case the governor and the Attorney General. Because they become nationalized, if you will, federalized. And they lose touch with the states. And the states have no say in the federal legislature anymore. None. They have no say in the federal government anymore, whether it's the president, the courts, or the Congress. They were given a spot in the federal government, in a bicameral Congress, in the upper house, the Senate. And the Senate, where these states would be represented with the United States senators, two from each state, would have enormous authority. The authority over treaties. The authority over recommendations for the courts and other positions in government, high positions. Now the states have nothing. Zero. Nothing. Now, what does this have to do with anything? Chuck Schumer is a creation of the 17th Amendment. The leftists are a creation of the 17th Amendment. They have completely undermined the lowercase Republican nature of our republic. You have a mixture of the mobocracy, because they're responding to their kook base, not their state, the kook base, and autocracy. Responding to the kook base to put people in positions who will impose the ideology that they practice on the rest of the nation. Or in this case, to prevent a highly qualified individual who meets all the constitutional requirements to serve on the Supreme Court, because they want to control the Supreme Court and every other court in the country, Not because they care about compassion, not because they care about parties having a fair hearing, but because they want to advance their agenda. Brutus, the anti-federalist, Yeats, was exactly correct. I want you in the media, go ahead and write this down so we can go back and forth on this. Chuck Schumer doesn't represent the Democrat Party or any party. Chuck Schumer's a tyrant. He's a tyrant. And the Democrat Party leadership represents tyranny. Not a living and breathing society, which is what you want, but a phony living and breathing constitution, meaning no constitution at all. And so they don't care that on the one hand they use the filibuster rule to block George W. Bush's appellate court judges, and then on the other hand they suspend it when it comes to Barack Obama's district court and circuit court judges, and then on the other hand they use it again when it comes to Mr. Gorsuch. So the Republicans then have to slay them on this and stop them and so forth. The 17th Amendment. When you look back in history, when you look back on what's happened to this country, it's a war between Americanism and progressivism. That's what's going on in the United States Senate. So when I tell you I've written in Rediscovering Americanism, subtitled The Tyranny of Progressivism, a book that's very, very important for the ages, a book that will really, open doors for you intellectually and give you some of the answers that you have been craving. I'm quite serious about this. Well, it's not a book that spends a lot of time on current events or current politicians. It may touch on it very, very briefly. It's a book that applies to all of it. To all of it. And explains how we got here. I don't mean one president after another. It explains the battle. You know, one of the things that concerns me, quite frankly, when I'm in the car, I'll bounce around. Maybe I'll listen to satellite radio or some terrestrial radio or this side or the other. And I hear different hosts from time to time, and I don't spend a lot of time. Frankly, I like to put music on or nothing. But when I do, I keep hearing conservatives or pseudo-conservatives use the same language as leftists. Class warfare. They talk about the elitists and your betters, and your betters and your elitists. That is way too sloppy, clunky of a way to describe what's going on. It's just too sloppy. We need scholars and intellectuals who are constitutional conservatives to do battle with the ideological left and their masterminds. We need them on our courts. We need them in our think tanks. We need them in our universities. We need them. Because in the end, ladies and gentlemen, and I should save this, but I'm not. Let me just touch on it. In the end, when people say, oh, philosophy, that's esoteric, or principles, that's esoteric, we want to deal with bread and butter issues. Philosophy and principles deal with bread and butter issues. They determine whether you're going to be free or not. They determine whether you're going to be prosperous or not. They determine what kind of country you're going to live in. Venezuela is the forced, iron-fisted imposition of an ideology, of principles. The founding of America was a battle over a philosophy, principles, and whether we were going to be a free people and a prosperous people or not. Anyway, I will move on. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
You know, ladies and gentlemen, I guess many of you have too. I watched some video footage of these little babies on the ground after Assad ordered sarin gas dropped on this community, flopping around on the ground like flounder out of the water. And it is sickening beyond belief. and it brings tears to my eyes. I just watched it during the break. Again. Little babies in their diaper flopping on the ground. They can't control themselves. Their nerve systems are shutting down. They're just shaking and shit. Little babies. I don't even know if I can voice this. I'm going to give it a try. I see these big men surrounding genocidal assassins like this, and I think to myself, why don't you turn around and put this guy down? Why don't you put him down? The hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people who've died, the torture chambers they have in Syria. Just if you have any sense of humanity, you look at these videos, these poor little babies, like fish on the shoreline. This is why Trump changed his mind. He saw what I saw. He saw what you saw. What kind of a monster does this? That kind of a monster. And, of course, who backs him up? Who props him up? Vladimir Putin. All these disgusting fools in our own country who back this guy up. Some of them with microphones. Some of them with TV cameras. They make me sick to my stomach. I'll be right back. Do these phony conservatives, these code pink Republicans, who get behind the microphone and go on and on about Putin and how he's helping us with ISIS and what do you want, World War III, it just shows you they're not particularly intelligent. Do they know that Vladimir Putin is arming the Taliban now against our soldiers in Afghanistan? Do they know that? I mean, Putin is a very diabolical man. And I find it appalling that these clowns give him any leeway whatsoever. He deserves none. He deserves none. And so just want to make that point as clear as I can. What am I doing, Mr. Producer? Where am I? Okay. What did I do with that? All right, here we go. Well, we're going to have to find it because I don't have it. All right, what I'm going to do now is take a call. Oh, here it is. Wait a minute. Delta Defense. So you've all heard me talking about the United States Concealed Carry Association, right? Well, they're my latest discovery when it comes to firearms education, training, and self-defense insurance. They're truly changing the game for responsible gun owners like you and me, preparing us for everything that comes before, during, and after self-defense shooting. It's true. Things happen. They offer thousands of free training videos and articles. They have a critical response team available 24/7. And they even deliver concealed carry magazines straight to your front window. That's right. If you wind up defending yourself with a handgun, well, you're going to need their critical response team 24/7. Now, they want to do something special for you, my beloved audience. They want to buy you 10 of the guns of your dreams. They want to buy 10 of you a gun of your dreams. $1,500. $1,500. So which gun will you choose? A custom 1911, a brand new shotgun? Whichever gun you've had your eye on could be yours, thanks to my friends at the USCCA. Just visit defendthem.com to enter for free today. It's that simple. Don't miss your chance to take home the gun of your dreams completely free. $1,500. Just go to defendthem.com right now. Get your name on the entry list. There's no tricks, no surprises. That's all you do. And be sure to check out their membership program. There's truly nothing out there like them. That's defendthem.com, defendthem.com. Mr. Producer, everybody's being invited to dinner at the White House. Have you noticed that? Everybody's being invited to dinner at the White House. I'm not invited to dinner at the White House. I mean, liberal Democrats are hired on the staff. In fact, liberal Democrats are taking over the White House. The big three, Powell and Kahn. I never heard of them, Mark. Exactly. And Kushner. They're tightening their circle. They believe in the Paris Accords. They believe in family leave subsidies. They believe in, typical liberal crap. So, yes. But here I am, little old me, constitutional conservative. By the way, this is all tongue-in-cheek. I don't want to be invited to anything. But here I am, little old me. It's amazing. I'd like to see what the White House looks like again. I used to go in there all the time during the Reagan administration. Been several administrations since then. Really, it's true. Let us go to Daniel, Seattle, Washington, Sirius Satellite. Yes, sir.
Mark, how are you today?
I'm all right. How are you?
Okay, you had two topics today that get close to my heart. We should not be gassing children. That's your last.
All right. We are not gassing children. What are you talking about?
I know we're not, but I don't think America, that is something America does not do as far as I know, and I do not think we ought to associate with people that do. And if those people are supposedly
all right, let's slow down. We're not associating with Assad. We have nothing to do with him. He's not an ally. We're not supporting him. The Russians are. We have so-called conservatives in this country who talk up Putin. Putin is the one that's holding up his puppet Assad.
He ought to be eliminated instantly.
I agree with you. I hear this argument. Well, what do you want to do, get into every country? No, did I say I want to get into every country? No. The vast majority of countries around the world suck. Let me repeat it. The vast majority of countries around the world suck. Not all, but most. And that's one of the reasons we're trying to protect this great land that we have, so we don't turn into one of them. Now, that said, there are times when you act not necessarily out of consistency, but out of morality. That you've seen something as a people, you've seen something your leaders have, and you say enough is enough. And that's why countries intervene from time to time in events in some places, and they cannot intervene in all places, nor should they. All right, Daniel. Appreciate your call, my friend. Joan, North Andover, Massachusetts, on the Mark Levin app. How are you?
Good, Mark. Thanks for taking my call. In the first hour of the show, you had a gentleman talking about the surveillance, and he was wanting something to happen now.
I had two gentlemen.
Yes, this one that was very frustrated and wanted prosecution to happen now.
Oh, right.
My point is I agree with you 100% that as frustrating as it is, these investigations take time. And I would caution people, liberals especially on the far left, they're so unified and they're such great planners. And obviously, I think an example of this is like the Obamas and Valerie Jarrett taking up residence right in Washington, D.C., and unafraid, or it's here.
Joan, maybe I'm a little too impatient or intolerant, but when I have people call me and they throw their hands in the air and they surrender right out of the gate, I can't take it. Mm-hmm. I just can't take it. What are we supposed to do? Roll up into a fetal position and just roll along? I mean, I don't know. Well, no one's going to be prosecuted. How come nobody's been prosecuted? I mean, okay, forget it then. Let's talk about meatballs.
Well, the liberals have a lot of patience, so I just caution everyone. We need the patience as well to do the right thing. And so thank you, Mark. Thanks for all you do.
And thank you. Thank you, Joan. J.D., San Francisco, KSFO, go.
Hey, Mark. It's to speak with you. First caller, about a year-long listener. Hey, I just wanted to tell you, I came across your show on the Patriot Channel about a year ago.
Thank you.
And since then, I've taken a number of Hillsdale courses. I've purchased every single one of your books, read almost every single one. Can't wait to not your last one, but your newest one coming out. I've already pre-ordered it. But
Thank you.
I'm a driver out in the Bay Area for ride-sharing services, and
oh, really?
Through so much of what you've done and the influence that you've made in my life, I've gotten into some really great conversations with passengers, and I've handed out little pocket copies of constitutions to people and just really tried to make a difference in people's mindsets. And there's a lot of people out here that have some pretty strong mindsets, I'll tell you what.
Wow, you sound like a great guy. How old are you? I'm just curious.
I'm a millennial. Not that I know you don't like that term, but I'm 32 years old.
Wonderful.
And I've lived in a number of states, but I grew up in
California. Well, can we swap you for
and...
Jared Kushner? I think you could run all these different things.
You know, I love this country, and it just really concerns me more and more to see, so much of what I feel, makes this country great, just shrugged off and thrown off. And I hear people all the time tell me things like the American dream is dead. And I just try to tell them, the American dream is only dead if you make that decision in your heart and in your mind to believe it's dead.
How do you live in this country? How do you live in this country and pretend you can't? In other words, with all the government's doing, and with all that we need to really be concerned about, and I am, and we must be, the fact of the matter is there's still so much opportunity, which is why people pour over this border, not only for opportunity but for goodies. But you get the point. So I just feel that people who are born into liberty, or at least quasi-liberty, they just don't get it. I try to point out, and I'll be pointing it out in the book too, but let me just point it out now, and I've talked about this briefly before. Just think about this. You see what's going on in Venezuela, J.D.? People are walking around the streets with baseball bats to kill animals, dogs, cats, pigeons, whatever they can get to eat. This was a civilized society. It has the biggest oil reserve in the world. Biggest oil reserves than in the United States and Saudi Arabia and Russia. The biggest in the world. And it's now one of the poorest countries on the face of the earth with the highest rate of violence on the face of the earth. They took a civil society. They rammed through this ideology. They rammed through their poisonous principles. They imposed it on the people. Look what's happening. Okay. But look at other places. Even places that are clearly are not so aggressively tyrannical, where people are starving, they can't eat, and so forth. Well, if you want to pull your car over right now, it is, what is it? It's 5:45 at night on the West Coast. You can go to a 7-Eleven, you can go to any mini mart, you can go to a small grocery store, you can go to a supermarket, and get anything you want to eat. Get anything you want. I mean, I'm not talking about alcohol and driving, but anything you want to drink. Anything. Pretty much. You can have wine from all over the world. You can have a lobster if you want. You can have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. You can have artichokes. You can have bananas. You can have whatever you want. I don't care how poor you are. You can have whatever you want. You have access to it. Kings and queens 200 years ago. We live better than kings and queens 200 years ago. You walk into your home, you hit a switch, and the lights come on. You hit a switch, and the lights go off. You don't have to go outside in the woods. You got running water in your own home, cold and hot. You've got a toilet. You got a tub and a shower. These are basics in America. These are luxuries for the rest of humanity. It didn't just happen. It happened because of our Declaration of Independence, because of our Constitution, because of our belief in private property rights, because of our Judeo-Christian ethic, because of our belief in individualism, rugged individualism, and they are all under attack. They are all under attack. We have opportunity in this country. We have to defend it against the other side. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Don't have enough time. Right-wingers being invited to the White House, Mr. Producer. I'm reading this Politico piece. Some of the biggest names in right-wing media. First of all, you got to laugh at Politico. What a joke that operation is. So you believe in the Constitution. You must be a right-winger. You believe in liberty. Oh, a right-winger. Property rights. Oh, you must be a right-winger. Unlike us sensible middle types in the Politico's website. right-wingers being invited to dinner at the White House. I'd rather they hire more of them than invite them to dinner. How about that one? How about that? You know, it sometimes feels like we're in a whole new political era. But is it really new? When we understood our glorious American heritage, we see today more clearly in how we can make wise decisions about our future. Do you really know the American story? Many of you do, but there's more to it. There really is. Hillsdale has a new free online course on our rich American heritage that's unlike anything else because it covers our external and internal struggles for freedom. If you're thinking that you don't have time, I get it. So do this. Just watch the first lecture, only 45 minutes long, by my friend Dr. Larry Arnn. He is terrific. You will be spellbound. Brilliant, brilliant man. And he's president of Hillsdale College. On why it's important to study American history, and I guarantee you'll be hooked. I guarantee it. This inspiring course provides information you won't find anywhere else. Your kids won't get this in school, just like we didn't. It's available for free to teachers and their classes, too. You have nothing to lose. You have a lot to gain. You ought to try it. And you can access this powerful American Heritage course at levinforhillsdale.com. As always, it's free as part of Hillsdale's mission to help all Americans pursue truth and defend liberty. That's levinforhillsdale.com, Levin for Hillsdale.com. I want to remind you, a former CIA analyst of some prominence, John Schindler, wrote in The Observer yesterday a rather long piece, but part of what he wrote is this. And I want to remind you, I read it yesterday. Not to put, I'll tell you why I'm reading this. Because you're hearing all this propaganda about how wonderful Susan Rice is, and they're going after her because she's a woman and she's a minority. Just such BS. Not to put too fine a point on it, writes Schindler, but Susan Rice is a deeply unpopular figure with our intelligence community. Her abrasive personality and overall incompetence graded in the intelligence community. Her habitually coarse language was inflicted on senior intelligence officials more than once, while nobody outside Obama's inner circle considered Rice even marginally competent at her job. In other words, she's a hack. Simply put, she was the worst national security advisor in American history, at least until Mike Flynn's dismally failed 3-week tenure. You know, I really feel bad for Flynn, the way his name's being thrown around and he just can't come out in public and defend himself because he's obviously a target. And so his lawyers and he have to protect himself, but it's too bad. In addition, Rice didn't like to play by the rules. Listen to this, including the top secret ones. On multiple occasions, she asked the NSA to do things they regarded as unethical and perhaps illegal. This man Schindler should also be invited to the Senate and House Intelligence Committees, not to testify because he's done anything wrong. He's a witness. He's a witness, a character witness. Respecting Susan Rice. When Rice was turned down, the NSA fears breaking laws for any White House since they know they'll be left holding the bag in the end. Rice kept pushing. As a longtime NSA official who experienced Rice wrath more than once told me, quote, "We tried to tell her to pound sand on some things, but it wasn't allowed. We were always overruled," unquote. On multiple occasions, Rice got top agency leadership to approve things which NSA personnel on the front end of the spy business refused. This means there may be something Congress and the FBI need to investigate here. This is damning of Susan Rice, who's being protected by the statist media, the Praetorian Guard media, especially CNN. Protected by the sellout, ideologically left hack media. Yes, she is. This gentleman needs to testify, not because he's the target of anything, but because he knows about Susan Rice, based on what he wrote here, rather than the phony story that's being pushed out there day in and day out by the media. We've got 30 seconds, Dan. Go.
Hello?
30 seconds. Go.
Hey, thanks for setting America on a constitutional path. I've read your books, especially Men in Black and Liberty Amendments, And real quick, I think there should be a state legislative approval process.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate it, but that ain't going to happen. But I appreciate your call, my friend. Ladies and gentlemen, we salute our armed forces, police officers, firefighters, and emergency personnel. Please check out Levin TV tonight. I know you're going to love it. And I'll see you on the radio tomorrow right here. God bless. Take care.